You ain't gotta finish first to get your first place prize. Don't need the front row just to let your light shine. The highest place of honor, serving at the lowest point. The power's in the voice, and you ain't gotta make no noise. They might say you finished last, but you still got the power, power, power. It's your time. Your gifts will last. Serve second. Still lead. It's your time. It's your time. It's your time.
It's the Serving Second podcast for helping you make sure you you're watching this podcast. I also need you to share this
It's
episode
your
with
time. It's your 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 time.
responsibility and influence every single day. So let me ask you a question. What do you do when you carry real responsibility? You're making major things happen and you're helping holding the organization together. And yet you still don't sit in the top seat. Family, this is the tension and this is the conversation we're going to get into today. This episode is a crossover from my conversation with Chaplain Adrienne Townsend Benton on the Transformation Station Leadership Podcast. There we got a chance to really dive into what it means to serve second, how to deal with the pressure, the purpose, and the power that comes from the second chair. We talk about what it means to lead with influence when you don't have the final say. We deal with the frustration of being overlooked and unpack how to know the difference between principle and preference. We wrestle with how to support the leader above you and advocate for the people around you, and yet still stay grounded in your mission and identity to serve. I also share why second chair leadership is not a backup plan. It's not a lesser role. It's not a waiting room. It's a leadership lane all by itself. So if you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or stuck in between carrying the weight and lacking the final say, this episode is just for you. And if you're serious about growing as a leader and not just chasing a title, I want you to lean in and really listen, because I believe something in this episode, something in this conversation is going to challenge you, it's going to sharpen you, and maybe even help you see your role just a little bit differently. Family, this is the Serving Second podcast. Let's jump into this conversation with Chaplain Adrienne Benton Townsend on the Transformation Station Leadership Podcast.
Not every leader sits in the top seat, but some of the most influential leadership happens from the second chair. Well, today on Transformation Station, we're unpacking what it really takes to lead with impact, with clarity and confidence when you're not the one in charge. Come on, let's get into this leadership conversation. Welcome back to Transformation Station Leadership Podcast, where leadership is about growth and resilience and real-world impact. I'm your host, Adrienne Benton, and today's episode is for leaders who carry significant responsibility without ultimate authority. We're talking about the deputies and the executive leaders and the second in command. That's right, the trusted right hands. It's time for us to meet our amazing guest who really is going to help us learn more about our leadership from various places. Now, let me tell you about Dr. Williams. Dr. Toussiant Williams is a servant leader shaped by faith, family, and a calling to help others lead with purpose. For more than 20 years, he has served in ministry with a consistent focus, guiding people towards Christ and helping teams thrive even when the most influential work is happening behind the scenes. He currently serves as the Vice President, Executive Secretary of the South Central Conference. Dr. Williams is the author of 3 books: How to Be a Scottie in a Michael Jordan World, One Day at a Time, a journey through the book of Proverbs, and When the Fire Falls. He also created Serving Second, a passion project that highlights the work, the weight, and leadership of second chair leaders, the trusted right hands who help organizations and ministries produce first place outcomes. Oh, listen, Dr. Williams, it is my honor, my complete honor, to welcome you to Transformation Station Leadership Podcast.
Adrienne, thank you so much. I am so excited, so honored to be here on this momentous occasion. I want to applaud you for 4,000 download episodes. Listen, that is
Woo!
major, major, major cahoots. I know there's a lot that goes behind the scenes, but just want to say congratulations to the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for this amazing community. Well, listen, we've been waiting to have this conversation for a while, and I really have been looking forward to it because second chair leadership, sometimes somebody may say, oh, this is a phrase. It's not just a phrase. It really is a reality for many leaders. Not everybody gets to be that CEO or the person who is sitting in the main chair, right? And we know that it's true that second chair leaders often carry the weight of execution, the weight of people, leading the people who are working behind the scenes. This role many times requires humility, right? So I want to start off by asking you this question. What makes second chair leadership uniquely challenging, and why is second chair leadership quite often misunderstood?
I want to say it's interesting we talk about this idea of second chair leadership. One of the things, the reason why it's misunderstood is because when you are in the second chair, more than likely you're there because you have certain gifts and skills and talents. And for whatever reason, you weren't selected for that top seat, the first chair. And a lot of times what happens, I just want to be transparent with you. There were several times in my career where I was in the running for being that first chair and I was overlooked or wasn't selected. And in my mind, I began to creep like, wait a second, is there something wrong with me or the other expectation? Well, Toussiant, how come you didn't get it? Or what's wrong with them? And I began to think, man, is this something that's, had some angst inside of me? And it wasn't until through a lot of prayer and reflection that this is not a demotion, but this is a place where you can serve. This is a place where you can kind of grow and develop. And in doing so, you can change and transform organizations. So I have a lot more to say, but that was kind of my journey of understanding and recognizing, hey, this is a part of who I am. In fact, two is in my first name, Toussiant. And God was just kind of saying, hey, listen, I'm the second born child. And so like I was kind of created in this area. And it wasn't something that was a negative, but this was an area that I can thrive in and do it in a very unique way.
I love that, right? One of the things I was thinking about when you were talking is this right here. Second chair leadership tends to be challenging because it requires high responsibility without final authority. And you touched on that, right? You were up for it, you didn't get it. Now you're second guessing, like, okay, was there something that I did or didn't do? Right? Am I lacking in some way? Why wasn't I chosen for that? And while you're processing that, you're bearing the responsibility now of all the responsibility, but the buck doesn't stop with you. Woo! I know from experience how that feels. You know what I'm saying? On the one hand, it's good to be that second chair. It's good to be that trusted person. It's good to be able to person that can hold the fort, right? But at the same time, sometimes you're just like, well, but what they said, I'm going to do what they said, even especially at times when you may have a different perspective or a different mode of operation, right? High responsibility without final authority. What do you think about that?
I think that's so interesting that you say that. And that's one of the things I really kind of had to navigate. How do you work with an individual when you don't always see eye to eye? And the reality is, anybody you work with, you don't. And there's something I identified. You have to determine what's principle and what's preference.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something to where my first chair, my senior pastor, my CFO, my CEO, the president, if we're having a conversation and there's some areas of principle, then I'm going to stand up on that. I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to devalue myself or compromise my principles based on something that is a principal decision. But if it
Mhm.
comes to something that's preference, I have to stop and say, okay, this person has been called for whatever reason to be the leader, and I've got to allow him or her to lead. And I
Mhm.
think that's one of the biggest challenges that I'm having. Well, I wouldn't say, yes, I would say that one of the biggest challenges is kind of determining that,
Mhm.
because for whatever reason they were selected. And let me say this to your audience, and as a faith-based person, I recognize that God is ultimately in charge and He orders my steps. Do I always
Yes.
like where He orders them? No, not always. But in these
Yep.
in
Mhm.
these situations, I've had to learn, okay, if God has allowed this person to lead and it's not a principled decision, then I have to kind of allow them to lead that process. And that's not always easy, but that's one of the things that helps me sleep at night, that understanding, okay, for whatever reason, because this person's charged, and embracing that. And here's the next step that comes with that. Once that person makes a preference, the next step is to get on board and support it.
Yes.
Now, is
Yes.
that is the mature the mature leader, and that's part of this journey. Is there is a growth process for me or for the person that's serving in the second chair, that
Mhm.
in this journey you're going to grow as well. And I think as a part of that, I've really seen how understanding that has allowed me to have peace, knowing that number one, God is ultimately in charge, and putting this person in charge, I'm there to help support and push and encourage them. So at the end of the day, we can all win.
We already having a masterclass right now. This was question number one. Like, I'm loving this, and I love, as I'm listening to you talk, part of me is thinking, maturity,
Hmm.
perspective, being in for the journey, not just the very quick results, right? And I was thinking about this. The goal is not to be seen as right, but the goal is to help the leader and the organization win. Leaders, we're going to repeat this one more time. The goal is not to be seen as right. So to second chair, right? You're not the person that's ultimately in charge, but the goal is to help the leader and the organization win. And I've often said with my teams, like, you win, I win. The organization
Yeah.
wins, we win, right? Changing it from I to we. Um, and so here at Transformation Station, we always like to give our viewers and our listeners an opportunity to stop and to reflect and to really hone in on what is being said. And so I want to give our listeners and viewers a reflection prompt right now. Ask yourself this question: where am I carrying responsibility without authority? And how am I choosing to show up in that tension? How
Mm.
we choose to show up in that tension is what makes the difference as it pertains to legacy, as it pertains to what we're modeling to our team, and many times as it pertains to the culture that we are helping to build or helping to tear down. Look like I interrupted you from saying something.
No, as you're talking, it's kind of, I had an opportunity to talk to a good friend of mine, Ashonda Nunez Henry, and she was just saying, this she shared this with me. I interviewed her, and she said, your vibe attracts your tribe.
Yes. Yes.
And when you have a positive attitude, when you have the ability to really embrace these non-principled things where you can kind of understand, kind of get behind things, it completely changes. And there's two things I want to share with this, two ways. The first one is, I'll give a spiritual example. I was really attracted to this idea of serving second from the story of David and Jonathan.
Mhm.
Many are familiar with the text. God, man looks on the outward appearance, and God looks at the heart, and God passed over all of David's brothers to make David the next in line. But in passing over David's brothers, God also rejected Jonathan, Saul's son.
Mhm.
Saul, I mean, Jonathan was raised to be king. He went to the king training, went to king schools, all that preparation, and God chose to go with David.
Mercy.
And Jonathan could have been, I'm angry with David. I'm gonna help Saul kill David because it's gonna be my throne. But he understood, if David was God's anointed, then David's success means God's success, which means Israel's success, which means
Mhm.
my success.
Mercy.
And when I saw that and embraced that, it happened to come around the time where The Last Dance came out. That was the documentary of the Chicago Bulls and Michael
Mhm.
Jordan and Scottie Pippen. And I was reading this and reliving my childhood basketball dreams. I remember watching Scottie after the documentary was over, and he was frustrated because The Last Dance was shared in the lens, or through the lens, of Michael Jordan and not Scottie. And he was like frustrated, and I was like, wait a second, Scotty, you are a main part of this organization. You are the one who helped Jordan get to where he was. And
Mhm.
what I learned is that Scotty didn't understand how to be a Scotty in the Michael Jordan world.
Mercy.
And so by him finally getting this, and the crazy thing is, a friend of mine, Ty Douglas, knows Scotty, and he told him about the book, and he actually gave Scotty the book. And Scotty's like, he was like, he had, exactly, he had the book there, and I was just like, for him to be out of the game and finally realize that he made an impact. I would hate for people and your listeners that are watching that are sitting in the second chair, leave your organization and then
Mercy.
realize you can make an impact and then
Mercy.
realize that you can help your team win. And
Mm.
that's one of the things is that passion project, to understand that while you may not be in the first chair, while you may not be the person in the spotlight, you make a major contribution to the wins of the team. And here's the crazy thing, and I'm done. I'm gonna shut up. This idea of when I looked and did the research for the book, of all the teammates Michael Jordan had, only person that has the same amount of rings, the same amount of championships as Michael Jordan is Scottie Pippen.
Wow.
They were
Wow.
together, each and every ring. And Michael said, I wouldn't be here without Scotty. And I
Mm.
think for many Scotties out there, they think, man, because I'm not on the Wheaties box, because I'm not in the commercial, I'm not. But if you embrace the fact that there's no Hall of Fame for Michael Jordan all by himself,
Mm-hmm.
Scotty is in that same Hall of Fame. That means there were people who watched what Scotty did and said, this is such a high level, we have to distinguish him from everybody else. And so I want to challenge somebody that may be frustrated, that may be angry, maybe disappointed about serving second. If you serve with all your heart, if you, like the Bible says, whatever hands find to do, do it with
You.
all your might. You'll be
Yes.
surprised at the doors that will open. You'll be surprised at how God opens doors or things happen simply because the world is looking for excellence, not just
Mm.
people who serve in the first chair.
Mercy. Listen, podcast over. We're done. Like this is
Yeah.
it. Listen, I love it. Right. Then honestly, Transformation Station, listen, take this seriously. We always invite you to pull out your notebook, write some notes in the chat right now. Go ahead and tell us what is resonating with you, even at this very moment, because this is a real life, real world situation that we're talking about. We're talking about mindset, perspective, and being able to find value. And on that note, I want to ask you this question: how can second chair leaders add real value and influence decisions without overstepping?
That's a great point. I think there's several areas where you can kind of add influence. Number one, you have to embrace where your feet are.
Mm,
So a
okay.
lot of times for individuals in a second chair, they're looking, how can I get to the first chair? When that next vote comes up or when that next opportunity comes, I want to be, and you miss out on the fact that you have a responsibility to grow where you're planted. And so
Mm,
that first thing is to embrace where you are. And then the
mhm,
next step is to, and this is kind of part of the thing that made Scottie Pippen so great, is that he was a recruiter
mm,
when it came to embracing the vision that coach had and vision for Mike had, and then making sure other people around him knew what the plays were, knew what was going on, and he communicated that. And so those two things are crucial when it comes to how to kind of really create value and impact, is understanding, man, you can't grow by trying to get somewhere where you're not right now.
mhm.
And it doesn't mean that, and this is one of the challenges or the drawbacks when it comes to people who serve second. There are people that around you that may not. In fact, let me just say this. My dad said, and I love him. My dad said, Toussiant, you're not second. You're just as good as anybody else. And I was like, in his mind, he thought because when I said I'm serving second, that I'm second
Mhm,
or less than somebody else.
mhm.
No, what this simply means is I am embracing this role at where I am right now. That no matter where I am, no matter what position I have, and this is the mantra that we have on the podcast, that the mission I serve is bigger than my title.
Mm,
So if I
mhm.
recognize that the mission and the work that I'm doing is greater than me getting a position, that when those opportunities come, if it be God's will, then I'll have that opportunity. But if not, I'm going
Yes.
to make sure that everybody on my team knows what's going to be happening, that understands what's going on. Um,
Yes.
and and I can kind of go on and on. I love this. Let me just say this before I know you have time
Go
close, but
ahead,
I
do
just want to say
that.
this. One of the things, the best things I love about Scotty is that Scotty was a lockdown defender.
Mhm,
And what that simply meant was Jordan was a phenomenal scorer, but what he had a challenge doing. What took him away from scoring was having to play defense. Now, MJ was a great defender. In fact, he won Defensive Player of the Year. But Scotty was able to come and take away the opposition's best player. And so he locked him down. So that's one less thing Michael had to worry about. And I just want to challenge those who are on this transformation station. I want you, if you're serving in the second chair, to be like that lockdown defender, to make sure that your number one can find their genius zone and work in that and remove those distractions and find them, allowing them to be in a place where they can do the reason why they're there and in that position and do that and find creative ways to assist in making sure they stay focused. You can stay focused on getting those distractions out of the way so that the organization can and the team can optimize the gifts that are a part of the team and the organization.
I love this. On behalf of Transformation Station, challenge accepted. We accept the invitation you have just given us. I love this. And honestly, to every leader that's listening and watching, I again want to invite you to really make sure nothing is distracting you right now. Hone in on what Dr. Williams is sharing with us, because these are literally keys on how to be able to move forward in a resilient and positive manner in the environment in which you are in the role in which you are in, right? How can you offer insight in a way that supports alignment rather than competition? Something food for thought. Question that's food for thought, but think about it. Dr. Williams, what internal challenges do second chair leaders face most often? How can we navigate those challenges?
I think the first thing is a spirit of competition. And I am a natural competitor. My brother and I play basketball, football. Everything is. When I'm in the airport, and I'm see people walking, I'm like, how can I beat that person? In my mind, they don't even know it, but I'm always competing. When I'm driving, and one of the things I had to kind of understand and learn is that this life and this journey is not about competing. It's not about me trying to get a win or a loss. It's about serving, because when you serve, it's about the outcome. It's about the individual. And one of the things, I guess, in answering the question, one of the things you have to navigate is getting past the idea of it's not about me. And that's one thing to where naturally the world focuses on who am I. And I don't know if you remember the idea that back in the day there was a commercial. Michael Jordan had a commercial. I want to be like Mike. You remember that? And in that idea of trying to be like Mike, in the Michael Jordans in our organizations, the Michael Jordans that I work with, was like I lost who I was.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the biggest things, that you can miss out on your superpower by trying to look at everybody else or trying to model your gifts like everybody else and not realizing there's something special that you bring as an individual that serves in the second chair that the organization wouldn't be without you. And so I think that understanding that you have unique gifts and not trying to comply to the idea, this false idea that there's only the person in the first chair is the only one that serves as a leader, that you can lead in other areas of the organization and make a huge impact and be able to sleep at night without the stress of being in that first chair.
Yeah, absolutely. They say that healthy leaders ground their identity in purpose, not in position, right? And so Transformation Station, we have a best practice that we want to share with you right here, and that is define personal success by impact, not by recognition. Track the growth, stability, and the outcomes that you help create. Dr. Williams, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself that it's really important that we understand what we bring to the table in every situation, that we understand our own value. We have to understand that, be able to identify it, know it, before we can expect anyone else to. And also when we understand it, then that hunger and thirst for being understood is satisfied. You're not looking for external recognition. I'm just happy to be here. I'm just happy to have space and room where I can exercise my passion, where I can live out my calling. It changes your motive. It changes the filter in which you operate. So I want to thank you so much for honing in and sharing that with us. So then how should second chair leaders manage loyalty? Right? We'll remove competition. How should second chair leaders manage loyalty upward while advocating for our teams and for the mission?
I think the idea of loyalty is tricky in that loyalty is not based on a person. It has to be based on principle. And so this idea of I'm going to be loyal to Adrienne because she's my president, she's my CEO, she's the person that's in charge of me, and I'm going to be down with her no matter what. That's not what serving second is. You've got to understand that I'm going to be along for the ride as long as my principles are not violated. And and as that happens, and understanding, okay, I'm going to be aligned. And let me say this: if you see that principles are not valued, then now we have opportunity. Okay, wait a second, maybe we need to kind of find another opportunity. Maybe that's the door closing. I may need to find another opportunity. But if your principles aren't violated, if you're being treated as an individual that is valued and your contributions are valued, just like that biblical example, I think it's important that you understand the journey that it takes to get to where we want to be. And I think that's so important because in trying to be free from, or I guess that may not be the best word, but this idea of loyalty is not necessarily something I'm being loyal to a person. I'm being loyal to an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to develop, an opportunity to, and let me just say this. I'm not, I have a specific thought in mind. I just came up. I want to make sure we share it.
Mhm.
One of the things I learned, a friend of mine, some of you may know Eric Thomas, I was serving as an associate somewhere. He's, listen, when you leave, you need to make sure that you keep the lessons that you learned from being in this position. And I
Mhm.
thought about that. And at the time, I'd been in there maybe a year, maybe 10 years I've been in this situation. And I didn't realize there were some things I liked that the person in the first chair did. And the other
Mhm.
things I hated. I was like, there's no way in the world. And when I had the opportunity to be in a first chair, when I had an opportunity to serve in other areas, I was able to say, these are things that are positive about it, being a person in the first chair. And these are some things I don't want to repeat because I remember how I felt. I remember that I was ignored, or I remember that I was, just various things that I don't want anybody else to face. And so I think that's also important, not just to kind of remember or kind of focus on those rosy things, but in those difficult moments, then when the time comes for you to lead, how can you make sure that nobody else feels those negative things that you felt when you're
Mhm.
in that same position?
Oof, this is deep right here. I love this. And you gave us really a call to action. A lot of us, you, sometimes we have leaders that may not lead well,
Hmm.
and we know the impact that that has had on us. And sometimes we then perpetuate that on those that we lead. And we want to invite everyone right now to really pray and ask God to bring healing so that your hurt doesn't hurt other people. They say
Mm.
bleeding people bleed on people.
Bleed on everybody else. Yep.
Yeah, it's really important because if I hear you correctly, the second chair isn't a waiting room. It's a leadership training ground.
Yep.
You're not waiting around. You're still leading. This is a training ground where in that second chair, you get an opportunity to really hone in on those leadership skill sets and principles. And you get an opportunity to exercise your skill sets in a different way than you will when that mobility happens, right? I think of the Bible verse that says your gifts will make room for you. Right. So that second chair is an opportunity to hone in, to grow, right? To put into practice what you envision yourself doing or being as, when that mobility at that time for a new position, a new season arrives. So, in a second chair position, you don't occupy that space waiting. No, you train. You
Hmm.
train so that you are ready, right, to be able to execute. Best practice is advocate upward in private, support decisions publicly, and frame team needs in terms of mission success. Notice we didn't say in terms of personal success, in terms of team success, right? You want shared responsibility, shared wins, shared success, shared of how we work through our situations. Not always easy, but it takes intentionality, right? And it is possible. What habits or mindsets, Dr. Williams, help second chair leaders thrive rather than stay or feeling stuck or sidelined as a second chair leader?
One of the habits that I really got into early on was to find individuals to mentor. Like one of the things that we can do is be encapsulated in our own cocoon that we miss out that there are people that are watching you, that are watching your journey, and they look up to you. And in that journey of building this team or serving second, you've got to find a way to build other people up. And what I love about this is because you're in a position of authority, because you're in a position of influence, there are people that are watching your example. And in doing so, you have the opportunity, you have the chance to completely change an organizational culture because you are now creating individuals that know what it means to lead, that know what it means to be respectful, that know what it means to acknowledge and support other people without it being any area of competition. So the first thing I would do would be mentoring other people and making sure that you're able to kind of build this. And the second thing I'll do that a good friend of mine, Pastor Dr. Carlton Burr used to tell me, never be held hostage. And he would tell me this when we're working together. Like, what are you talking about? Never be held. We would be working, putting chairs down, would never be held hostage. And his idea is that in your organization, serving as a number two, you have the unique ability to know where everything is and never be in a place where you have to rely on somebody else. And there'll be times where we'll be doing certain things and having keys to this janitor's closet or being able to have the passwords to the Wi-Fi, just random things that I learned that as a person in the second chair, you have the unique opportunity to put your imprint on the entire organization. Whereas a person in the first chair may have to focus on certain areas, but you have a unique ability to be able to imprint your DNA in the entire organization. And in doing so, you'll create individuals that will support you, that will support your journey, that will support what vision that you have. And that makes all the difference in the world. And then that was really helpful for me in that journey.
Yeah, I love that 1000%. And to everyone that's watching right now, this is a great place for you to go ahead and talk to us. Talk to us in the chat. Tell us exactly what's resonating with you. What's the best practice that you have found? We want to hear from you because we're a community that thrives and grows together. And as you were talking, I was thinking about this as far as best practice. Invest in leadership skills that transcend title, communication, emotional intelligence, decision making, decision framing, and systems thinking. This is the time, and when you're in that second chair spot, this is the time to invest wisely, invest in your professional development, invest in your resilience. And I love the fact that, you shared the illustration with us where you talked about not putting yourself in a place where you're not held hostage, right? Where you're able to the Wi-Fi password and having the keys and being able to just understand the nuances of the organization so that when you find yourself in that first chair, you're not stuck. And you have the corporate and institutional knowledge. And to everyone that's watching right now, we want to give you this best practice, right? Your reflection right now. Where might you need to speak up respectfully and constructively for the sake of the team or the mission? Where might you need to speak up right now? Go ahead and tell us. Put it in your notes, but tell us in the chat. Where might you need to speak up respectfully and constructively for the sake of the team or the mission? Advocacy is extremely important, and advocacy is very effective when, okay, here are a couple keys. It's effective when it's respectful, when it's data informed, and when it's mission centered, not emotional or personal. Why is this important? Sometimes when we look at advocating for others, if the advocacy is based on personality or it's based on my thoughts and my opinion, it's not going to last. The advocacy for the individual, either I'm going to get frustrated and tired if my advocacy is not understood and met with positive results right away, or My advocacy will change when my opinion changes. But man, if we're advocating for the system, the mission, for our team members, it's really important that we advocate based on the fact, not just what I think, but what I know to be true. And that our advocacy is mission centered. While we want our advocacy to focus on getting what we need for the team member, we also want to make sure that our advocacy for others is not personal, it's not emotional, right? And so it's important for us to remember that second chair leaders, we have to practice like a dual loyalty, supporting the leader above while stewarding the people below. Notice I didn't say lording over them or controlling them. No, stewarding them, right? Giving opportunities for the people that we are leading to grow, to have ideas, while at the same time helping everyone to understand what the mission is and keeping that mission clear. And for all of us, again, nobody's perfect, but it does require courage. Being a second chair, you got to have courage. You have to have courage because you're going to be called to have to make decisions. You're going to be put in some tight spots, right? You're going to have clarity. So it requires courage. It requires clarity. You have to know what the mission of the organization is. You have to know the policies. You have to know the rules and the regulations so that as you are informing, as you are leading, you can lead from a place of a clear vision and a clear understanding. You also have to have discretion, So as a second chair leader, you don't say everything in public. You don't have to call everybody out every time somebody makes a mistake, right? Yeah, you have to use discussion and know time and place. That also feeds into respect as well. So, as we turn the corner on this masterclass conversation, I want to ask you this final question, right? Talk to us. What is one practical action that a second chair leader can take this week to lead with confidence and clarity?
One area that you can do this week is identify your gifts and how they impact an organization. A lot of times we'll do work and we'll do things, and I'm guilty of this. I will think because I do it and it comes naturally to me, everybody can do it. So I want to challenge you to ask, if you're not sure what that looks like, ask 3 or 4 people that you work with. Hey, I'm just doing a little analysis. What are 2 or 3 top things that you think I bring to the organization? And what happens is when you're talking to people, sometimes they'll mention things. You're like, oh, I just do that naturally. That's just something I normally do. And you'd be surprised that there's certain gifts that you bring to the table that you may not, just because it comes naturally, you don't necessarily realize it, but you'll be surprised at how many people see the gifts and the impact that you bring and be able to contrast that. Here's the second part. Contrast that to that of the person that's in the first chair. Looking at the person and kind of taking just a mental note, what are 3 or 4 things that this person does well, and how can you use the gifts that you have to help that person focus in that area? So real quick, let me give you an example. One of the individuals I used to work with had a great presence in front, had a phenomenal time, great orator, but had very big challenges with details. And so while instead of saying, man, he's never good with details, no, what I would do is, hey, you stay up front. Let me make sure I manage those details. And so when there comes time to do a presentation, I can give you those bullet points. I can make sure that you have everything you need so that it becomes a seamless organization, because every time he won, every time they won, we won. And that's what I believe is so important. The areas and the things that you do so easily, find ways to enhance that so that you can help the person in that first chair. And the person in the first chair, if they're wise, they'll be like, listen, I've done this, but I've done it with this team, this individual. So where I go, we're going to go together. And that's how leadership happens, in training those individuals that you're serving.
I love that. One of my takeaways from what you're saying just now is, confidence grows where expectations are clear, right? When everyone understands what their areas of growth are, what the areas in which they're winning are, then the team understands how we complement one another. I love the illustration that you gave where you were willing to say, okay, so my leader, they're a great expositor, but not so much on details. Let me step into this role here so the team can win. I love that. I love that. And, to everyone that's listening and watching right now, we have shared many leadership gems in this conversation that should give all of us food for thought. And I want to invite you not to just think, have a casual thought conversation with yourself, but really and truly take your notes, read them, talk to another leader today about one or two or even three of the leadership principles that Dr. Williams shared with us, and invite your team to not just talk about it. How can we implement these leadership best practices and principles? Dr. Williams, thank you so much. It's been really rich. I want to go back to your book. Could you tell us a little bit about your book and resources that you may have that we could tap in?
Yeah, this was the idea of how to be a Scotty in the Michael Jordan world is a journey, a practical journey of what I experienced in my over 20 years of serving in a associate assistant, vice president type of role. And what this does is kind of gives an outline and a blueprint of how to move forward and how to thrive in that area, and understanding at the end of it that you have been gifted, that you have a unique skill set, one that if operated and understood and fully embraced could completely transform not just yourself but your organization. And so that's the idea of how to be a Scotty in the Michael Jordan world. You can find that on Amazon. Just you can search it, or just search my name, Amazon. Or you can, what I'd love for you to do is join or check out the Serving Second podcast. We follow us on Instagram or follow us on YouTube. That's where we have our podcast. Serving Second is the name of the podcast.
I love that. And so Serving Second Podcast, it is in the description box. Go ahead and tap on that link, follow, and don't just follow, but conversate. Like, let Dr. Williams know you are there in the room. And as a matter of fact, from watching this podcast, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and reach out to him. Let him know that you saw this podcast, and then really and truly let him know what has resonated with you. Feel free to ask questions as well, and buy the books. He has 4 books now, right? 3 books now. So we want you to go ahead and buy the book, support Dr. Williams, and as well as continue. Let's grow together as a community. Dr. Williams, it has been absolutely amazing to have you here with us today. I thank you so much for sowing into our leadership community with all of this value. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for being here, doing a phenomenal job. I'm just honored to be on this special 400,000 episode. I know this is just the beginning. We're looking next 400,000 episode. We're going to download. Yes. We're going to be excited about. So great job. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Listen, everyone, wasn't today's episode amazing? Like, today's episode reminded us that leadership impact is not defined by position. It's defined by influence and character. And here's that word, consistency. If this conversation resonated with you, I want to invite you to take one insight from this conversation and apply it this week. Whether that's clarifying expectations or strengthening alignment with your first chair leader or leading your team with renewed confidence. All right, well, listen, this has been great. I can't wait for you to share with us what you learned from Dr. Williams. So until next time, remember, some of the strongest leaders don't sit in the first chair, they steady the entire room from the second.